Hey guys, and welcome back to an episode of The Terror Zone. As you can see, I'm still wearing my Halloween costume. Don't worry, there's a good explanation of why. You'll see it when it comes out. The video and how we're going to end it. And don't worry, it's coming. Before I talk about what we're going to do today for this episode, we're going to talk about a few minor announcements. Number one, this might be the last few episodes of the Terror Zone, because we're going to go into more Christmas territory stuff, like Chestnut's show about Santa Claus, and my show about Terror Zone. It's Christmas stories that are of darker territory. So we'll have to stop right there for the Disney ones. And also, be sure to vote on this channel on the community tab on what Christmas movies you want the Warners to watch this year for the reviews. The King of Cartoons is asking all of you guys to figure out which movie we should watch, so please go check it out. But anyway, on with this episode. Today we'll be talking about the dark origins of Winnie the Pooh. Now, there's not much to say about Winnie the Pooh. There are minor changes for the story, and there's also a few dark history about it. So I'd like to talk about it today with you. The couple of minor histories I like to talk about. Now, I don't want to talk about everything in history because that takes a long time to talk about everything with the Pooh. So if you want to, go check out my sources on the history of Winnie the Pooh, check out John Solo's website. He talks about the Winnie the Pooh episode and how it works out. So if you want to know a full history on Winnie the Pooh, check his video out. It's really cool. You can check that one out. And there's a few documentaries on it too, like Christopher Robin one, and a few other ones like that. So please go check those movies out if you can. But anyway, on to the history we have. First who I like to talk about is about Winnie the Pooh himself as a character. One, his real name was actually Edward, short for Teddy. Now, originally Christopher Robin, the real life one, if you guys don't know, Winnie the Pooh was actually based on a true story about Christopher Robin, a boy that A.M. Milne's son, who had toys like Winnie the Pooh characters, which are. So, in a way, it's based on his toys and his stories. So, there you go. So, Christopher Robin originally named Winnie the Pooh Edward. And we'll get into why later on, why they changed it. Another good fact is that Winnie the Pooh wears a red shirt in the Disney version. Why is this a thing? Well, it turns out that A.M. Milne actually originally did attend Winnie the Pooh to have a red shirt on in a board game that he made that's for a color game. So every character wears a shirt in that one, including Winnie the Pooh, who happens to wear a red one in that one. So that's where that comes from. Anyway, Chapter 1, the history. We're going to look into the history of Winnie the Pooh first, and then we're going to move on to other stories and source material of a particular movie. Of the first one, we're only going to do the main adventures of Winnie the Pooh, because if we went all day with the rest of the ones, it'd take all day for us to do this. We're just going to do the original movie. But if you guys want to see me do any others, let me know in the comments below. But for now, I'm going to stick to the original movie and what it was based off of. Number 1. The Winnie the Pooh was based off Winnie the Bear. So this is where the original name Edward comes in. So A.M. Milne and Christopher Robin took a trip to the zoo once, and they saw a bear there named Winnie, who was in the army for a couple of times, and she was like a pet to them, in a way, entertaining them as they pleased. So in a way, Winnie was like their little famous bear. So Christopher Robin, while being interested into the bear, taking an interest within the bear, he decided to change his teddy bear's name to Winnie the Pooh instead. Although Pooh was a made-up name that L.A. Milne made up. Pooh meaning the boy, or whatever, basically. Or the little darling, or it's another name for like a cute little name. But anyway, Winnie was what's what they're gonna call him. Winnie is short for Winnipeg, in a way. So they decided to name him. Number two, Winnie the Pooh was made during World War One. So this story was made during World War One because back after A.M. came back from the war, he saw a lot of things, and I gotta be honest with you, he wasn't really in the best of health. He kept seeing a lot of things. War. He developed some kind of illness that made him feel and hear certain things about the war and stuff. So it made it hard for him to actually be happy or to enjoy himself in any way. Until his son told him his imagination with his toys and his imaginary friends that made him happy. And that's when he decided to make this book of A.A. Milne with the Pooh stories. Number 4. The Mills House and Stuffed Animals. So, the A.A. Milne House is deep in the heart of the 100-acre wood, and it's a real place. There were a lot of forest fires there, but it has been quickly rebuilt, and you could definitely see it. I also have a book on it that really shows you the map and everything about it. So, it's actually a house that Christopher Robin, his mom, and A.A. Milne lived in. And they hanged out, and they would play all his toys together there. It's very much like the 100-acre wood, pretty much, with everything. So the memories show that there's a big giant bridge there. There's a whole bunch of stuff. Christopher Robin would play in his imagination with his father throughout all these little stories of Winnie the Pooh through this particular house, based on his stuffed animals that his mother gave him. Like, for instance, Kanga and Roo were one of the stuffed animals that his mom gave him. Pooh was the one that his father gave him, and a few others, like Tigger and Eeyore. A.A. Milne's parents. Now, I gotta tell you, A.A. Milne and their mother, they were not exactly the best couple in the whole world, let's just put it that way. Most of the time, they left Christopher Robin with a nanny, so they can do most of the work on their own. Back then, they didn't really pay attention to their children back in the day. So, pretty much, Christopher was never really known to be with his parents that often, especially his mother. He was known to be more with his nanny or with his father, or sometimes with his mother. Every now and then he would switch back and forth. It was like they were divorced, but they were not really divorced at all. But, in a way, they never really loved each other that much. In fact, his mother was not, I wouldn't say she was a mean person, but she was rather strict in what she wanted to do in life. So let's just say that she wasn't really the nicest person to hang out with, but not too bad, per se. It's not like she hurt Christopher Robin in any way possible or anything like that. Just that their rules are very strict, and they need to be followed. Anyway, these two were not really the best couple in relations. They just didn't agree on certain things. But in other ways, they were still good to Christopher Robin. They still raised him to good, in a way. Christopher Robin's life. Now, I can't really say much of Christopher Robin's life. If you want to know more, you could see it on John Solo's, because he gives a more description about Christopher Robin's life. But I gotta be honest with you, Christopher Robin not really liked Winnie the Pooh all that much as a person. In real life. In real life, Christopher Robin kind of hated being Christopher Robin himself, and went by the name of something else, or for short, like Christopher, or Robin. He never went by the name, or Pooh. He never went by the name Christopher Robin himself. He was always named something else entirely. He swears that the Christopher Robin name in the books are just some other kid instead of himself. Now, the reason why he's so against being Christopher Robin is because when he went to school and stuff, it was very strict for him. And his parents were strict too about different rules about England and everything. So not only was that set upon him, but in school, people will make him popular and stuff and call him out that he's Christopher Robin from the books. Winnie the Pooh was very popular back in the day, so kids would call him out upon it, make fun of him, and do all sorts of things, and take pictures along with him. Christopher Robin just wanted some space. Let's just put it that way. He just wanted some space. He just wanted to get away from it all. He really hated being the popularity attention of this particular book. Just put it that way. So much that he kind of left his father to kind of leave him behind in the war. Just so he could stay away from all of it. But eventually he came back, and he realizes that wasn't really the best thing to do. But you could see how much it affected his life in general. Number 7. Rabbit and Owl. Rabbit and Owl are the only two characters of Christopher Robin that were not stuffed animals. They were actually imaginary friends that Christopher Robin made up. Instead, he had a little door for them that he would knock on their door with, or something else to play with that would pretend that they were there. Chapter 2. Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree. And now we're going to get some more story territory here. All this is pretty much the stories and based off of the movie in general. So we're not going to go into any more history after this point. But again, if you want to know any more, let me check the description. Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree was based off of 2 chapters of Winnie the Pooh. The story starts with Winnie the Pooh and the bees being introduced, and then the story starts with much of the same until Winnie the Pooh comes to Christopher Robin's house to get honey from the tree. And just like the movie, he asked for a balloon, and instead of one, there were 2, a blue one and a green one, all left over from Piglet's birthday party. Rabbit's relatives. You see, the Rabbit's relatives had... Now, I'd mention these characters. Originally, these characters never appeared in the Winnie the Pooh franchise at all, except for maybe in the TV show that one time. Other than that, these characters are really not shown that much. These characters are Rabbit's friends and relations. These guys are like Rabbit's relatives, and they come once in a while into the story. I think they're like cousins or something like that. So I think they're like a little bit younger. So every now and then they would come up in the story. In this case, they had leftover balloons from Piglet's party, so they gave them all to Christopher Robin. At Rabbit's house, Pooh eventually chose the blue balloon, and then rolled into the black mud to look like a rain cloud to trick the bees. He also asked Christopher Robin to take his gun with him in case of the bees get suspicious. Now, I assume it's a pop gun in this one, because why would Winnie the Pooh bring a pop gun with an actual gun with him? It doesn't make much sense. He's just a kid, so I think. But the reason why I assume this is because Winnie the Pooh later has one in the Tigger scene where he is startled by Tigger. He actually holds one, so that could be where he got it from. Anyway, everything goes relatively the same until Winnie the Pooh tells Christopher Robin to go get his umbrella. Very quick, Christopher Robin gets his umbrella and does the whole tut-tut, it looks like rain bit. While doing this, Pooh sings a little song, and it goes something like this. How sweet to be a cloud, floating in the blue. Every little cloud always sings along. How sweet to be a cloud floating in the blue. It makes him very proud to be a little cloud. Just like the movie, Pooh got discovered and became a big problem. Saying to Christopher Robin, trying to help him out. So during this part, Winnie the Pooh calls out to tell. He comes up with an idea. Tells Christopher Robin to shoot one of the balloons. At first, Christopher Robin was hesitant because he really wanted to keep this balloon for reasons for Piglet's birthday party. But then he figured, what's more important, his friend or his balloon? So he decided to shoot the balloon. The first time, he misses. But then he tries again, and then it's shot. Pooh came crashing down, and they simply got away from the bees. After the story was told, Christopher Robin was settling down in his room, and he looked at Pooh, and he was worried. Did he hurt him? Is he okay? It turns out Pooh is okay. It's a false alarm, and the whole ending ends with them walking off. So that is the first chapter of Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree. We're going to get into other stuff. The next chapter with Rabbit, and Winnie the Pooh comes to visit him. It all starts with Winnie the Pooh walking one day and humming to himself. The story actually starts with him waking up to a fresh new morning. It starts as usual, like in the beginning, where he wakes up, he does exercises, and he has breakfast. But it's the same, only instead of a mirror, it's a glass. And he goes tra-la-la-la, tra-la-la, up and down. After that, he goes walking out and humming to himself. He comes across Rabbit's hole. He calls down to him. Is anyone home? Rabbit eventually responds, no. The same thing as the movie. They kind of only it goes on for very long. Very, very tedious for sure. But then they eventually walk in, Winnie the Pooh greeting Rabbit. They eventually do the usual same stick until Rabbit starts eating and stuff like that. Instead of honey, Pooh actually eats condensed milk and bread. I like the Disney version. He eats whole lot of it. And eventually, you know what happens next? With our sticky voice, he gets into the hole and he's stuck. Having Rabbit to look at him and say, are you stuck? And he says, yes. And then Rabbit scoffs at him for eating so much. Eventually goes to get Christopher Robin, and he goes over and tells Pooh that he needs to wait to get thin again. So, while they wait for him to get thin again, they read to him every day. And stuff like that, until it was time. And when they did, instead of all the whole group coming together, just Rabbit and his relatives try to pull Winnie the Pooh out. Eventually they did, and Winnie the Pooh, unlike the ending in the movie, walks off and just hums back into himself, with Christopher Robin saying to himself, silly old bear. And that was Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 of Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree of the original book. As you can see, there are some minor changes, but not much can be said. Next, we're going to go into Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day. In this one, woof, there is a lot of chapters in this. And I'm sorry if I go out of order for this one, because there are so many other different chapters and many different things of this book. So, I just gotta tell you that these chapters are not in order to begin with, and they're all different things. So just be aware of that. When Disney made this one, it was kind of a compilation of many different chapters of Pooh at the House of Pooh Corner. So just be ready for that. Chapter 2 consists of Pooh meeting Tigger for the first time. With Tigger breaking into Winnie the Pooh's house as usual, but instead he decides to let him sleep over and have breakfast with him in the morning, which is what exactly happens. They sleep over, and when Pooh wakes up, Tigger is actually playing with the mirror. Just like in the movie, he's very afraid and he thinks he looks like him. And then he goes off to claim that the table attacked him, but turns out that it didn't attack him at all, and it was just a tablecloth. Misunderstanding there. Anyway, they go to sit down to eat breakfast. Winnie the Pooh gives him honey, of course. When Tigger says, ugh, Tiggers do not like honey. Pooh claiming, but you just said Tiggers like everything. Everything except honey. So, Pooh decides to go to Piglet's house to see if he can have him have acorns instead. which they did. He tries it, and he goes, ugh, tigers do not like acorns. And then Pooh's like, but you said tigers like acorns. Everything except acorns and honey. And of course, this follows up with where they go to the next house to Eeyore's to get some sizzles. The same thing happens where Tigger does not like the sizzles at all. Knocks it off the list. After this particular time, they walk off to Kanga's house next, where Christopher Robin is, to see if they can find food that Tiggers would like. During this moment, Pooh and Piglet are singing a song about how Tigger doesn't like any of the foods that he tasted, like sissels, acorns, and honey. He didn't like any of them. He never had any breakfast yet. So, I guess it's supposed to be an inspiration for Tigger's Wonderful Things, but I gotta be honest, I kind of like the Tigger version way better in the movie. This one just sounds very depressing to me, because Tigger just doesn't like anything. So, they arrive at Kanga's house. Mr. Robin finds Tigger, and he's not sure what Tigger's like either, because he thought the Tigger would tell them. But that's the whole problem, really. So they check out the kitchen. Tigger didn't like any of them, until it was time for Roo to take his medicine. So Tigger takes a taste of the medicine, and he actually likes it. So ever since that time, Tigger always comes to Kanga's house for more medicine. He's like, that's what Tigger's like. So, if they ever meet a Tigger, just give them medicine. I don't know what kind they like, though, to be honest. Anyway, that's that story. We go on to the next chapter, where we get into many more story confusing territory. One story is about a heffalump, where Pooh and Piglet set up a trap for a heffalump. Now, heffalumps in these stories don't exactly add up too well. It's mostly in Winnie the Pooh's and Piglet's nightmares or dreams, so they're never usually in the context of things. Woozles are included in this as well. We'll get into more Woozle territory later. So, in this story, Piglet and Pooh decide to trap a heffalump by digging a pit and putting honey as bait. They wait for the heffalump to arrive, but they see footprints, so they follow them into the pit. They thought the prints were a heffalump, but they were wrong. It was their own prints themselves. They repeat this in Winnie the Pooh and Tigger 2 when Tigger gets trapped in a tree and Pooh gets across the footprints themselves. They also repeat this moment in the Thanksgiving episode. So, they got trapped in their own sand pit. The very same sand pit appears in the first Tigger story where they get lost. So that is the first heffalump story we get to hear. As for woozles, there aren't that many woozle stories either, just in their dreams and nightmares. And also, there's one dream that Pooh actually particularly had was a woozle, where he picked off his fur and made it into a nest for his babies. Ugh. Anyway, there's that story too. The next story we're going to get into is Piglet Does a Grand Thing. This takes most inspiration from the Blustery Day episode, so keep a listen. This story starts with Piglet and Pooh hanging out together. They decided to wish everyone a happy Thursday, so they went to all their friends' houses, but it was very hard to get to all of them from the wind. It was very blustery this morning, so it was very hard to get anywhere. They went to all the houses until they arrived at Owl's house. They went to say happy Thursday to him and hanged out there for a little while, when all of a sudden, his treehouse falls down. Bonk. Owl was very surprised. He went to say to Pooh, Did you do that? Pooh responded, I don't think so. As he sat there for a while, Pooh, Piglet, and Owl were deciding what to do with his house, until Pooh came up with a very interesting idea. He decided to have Piglet being tied to a string by the wind and pulling the treehouse back into place. Piglet got very nervous, but Pooh encourages him by singing a little song that Piglet's doing a grand thing. So he ties Piglet to a big giant string and ties him to the house, pulls the house back up. It worked. But unfortunately, it didn't work too great. The tree was still down, but for the most part, the wind was just too strong. So unfortunately, Pooh's plan did not work successfully. So Piglet kind of takes a risk and lets go of the string by the wind, and he goes to tell Christopher Robin. When Christopher Robin got there, he decided to have Eeyore look for a house for Owl. And in this chapter, they find a suitable home for him. You know that house in the flood? Well, there is a callback to that story where Pooh is thinking of what to do. The idea he got was from the story of the flood, where he saved Piglet from a flood. And now this next chapter goes into where Eeyore finds a house for Owl, and he ends up finding one at a watering hole. That becomes his new house instead of him going to Piglet's house. So it all works out in the end. But there is a shout out to it in the flood scene in the movie where the watering hole gets sunk down. So that's that story. We're going to move on to two Tigger stories. Winnie the Pooh and Tigger 2. One story is about them getting lost in the woods with Tigger bouncing, and the other one is where he gets stuck in a tree. These two stories are pretty much original. They were not made by the books at all. Disney just made them. Now we're going to the last chapter, where they say goodbye, and the ending starts. And they go to the famous quotes. I'll talk about the minor changes about all the endings. Christopher Robin says to him, what do you like best in the world? Of course, he responds, I like eating honey with you and Piglet, while birds are flying outside. Once Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh got to the enchanted place, Christopher Robin tells stories of knights and queens as Pooh listens. Knight and Brazil. Most things that he is going to learn in school. Pooh asked if he can be a knight. Christopher Robin said, of course he can. He took a stick, and Pooh bowed, and Christopher Robin dubbed him. Winnie the Pooh dubbed him Pooh Bear, most faithful of all knights. They sit back down again, and Pooh dreamed of all the things that Christopher Robin told him about in school, and he wondered what knights do. He supposed that they just be faithful, and he imagines Christopher Robin as a king. But he is called back, and they say the ending quotes of the movie with a few minor changes. Like Christopher Robin says to Pooh that he had to promise that he didn't say that he had to promise him. Robin promised Winnie the Pooh that he would always come back for him and that he will always be together with him when he goes up to the top of the enchanted place, and that they'll always be together. He did say that they are going to leave each other, but he said that he'd always come back to this place with him. He doesn't say silly old bear in this one either. Then Christopher Robin says to Pooh, wherever I go, will you understand? Pooh replies, understand what? Grandpa looks and says, "Never mind," and then they walk off together. And that is the ending of Winnie the Pooh. I hope you guys enjoyed this version of Winnie the Pooh and the darker origins of it and what made things a little different. Tell me in the comments below what else you'd like to hear about Winnie the Pooh next, or what other stories you'd like to hear next. And please, go do all the announcements I just mentioned about voting and all that kind of stuff, and I'll see you next time. Please subscribe and like more. Bye!